Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Mark Cozzupoli. I am the Director of Veterans Services for Ulster County in New York, state of New York. And I am also an Air Force veteran, 26 years. I retired as the Command Chief Master Sergeant of my last installation. I've had 4 deployments during my time, been to Iraq, been to Afghanistan. But I tell you, I'm here with a group of people that I am in awe of myself. You hear of my career being a distinguished one, but when I look around this room here, I see some gentlemen and lady here who have provided me with a lot of motivation, and I'm honored to be here today with all of you and to facilitate this discussion and to hear a little bit about our living history that we can get from our World War II veterans and our Vietnam veterans, our author that's on site, and our Gold Star mother. So what I would like to do is have you all do a quick introduction so everybody can know who you are. If you wouldn't mind, just give your branch of service, and you give us your age while you're at it. So we're going to start with you, Jack. Can you give us a quick introduction?
Okay, my name is Jack Holder, born December 13th, 1921. I'll be 100 years old December 13th. U.S. Navy, joined the Navy April 24, 1940.
All right. And a survivor of Pearl Harbor?
Survivor of Pearl Harbor, Midway, flew 48 missions over Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands. This is all in the PBOI, commonly referred to as the Catalina Flying Boat. I was transferred to San Diego under my orders read to help commission a new PBOI squadron and return to the Pacific. But when I got to San Diego, my orders were changed. I started training in the B-24 Liberator. April 1943, I was in Dunksville, Devonshire, England. Started anti-submarine patrol over the English Channel and the Bay of Biscay, which is the western coast of France. Flew 56 missions over the channel.
Well, excellent. All right.
Sunk 1 submarine there.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one quick? Did you know Chick Kalala? Armando Chick Kalala, Jack?
Yes.
He passed away. A friend of mine in Rockland County, but he was 100 years of age and passed away a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I heard the bad news of him. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jack. So I'm going to come down to our next gentleman, Hank. Introduce yourself, please.
My name's Hank Kudzik. I'm 96.
Don't get upset.
I served on 2 submarines. I'm the only submariner here. On the Nautilus, I made 8 runs, war patrols, starting with the Battle of Midway. And then I made 6 on the Gar, and all those patrols were made around the Philippines. Midway was in June of 1942-43. We were sent to northeast of Midway. Nimitz said he thought that it was very likely that the attack is going to be Midway. They managed to decipher the Japanese code. We sank the 4th Japanese carrier. They had 4, we had 4. We lost 1. They lost them all. The Soryu was the last one we got. I detected the smoke. Every so many minutes, you got to do 360 with your periscope, just in case if you surface and you don't want any surprises. I spotted the smoke when it was my time on the scope. I spotted smoke, black smoke on the horizon. Soon, the executive officer and the captain came up to the conning tower where I was on a wheel, and they they verified that you couldn't tell whether it was us or them. The captain says, we have to surface and go as fast as we can until we get a silhouette. Now, it's going to be them or us. Before we shoot, we want to be. It was determined by the skipper on the ID books that it was the fourth carrier, Soryu, S-O-R-Y-U. And to get there, we had to get on the surface. A submarine is like any other ship. We can sail on top of the blue water, and we can sink ourselves. And hopefully they will get back up again. That's not an iffy. We got to where the carrier was. Now the captain's name is Brockman, Bull Brockman. The executive officer is Ozzie Lynch. To be in a conning tower of a submarine is very small. In other words, 5 people in the conning tower, it's crowded. You're elbow to elbow. Aruga is dive, and 3 arugas is surface if you can. He got to, the captain's talking to the exec officer. Ozzie was a camera nut. He was trying to take a picture of something through the periscope with not much success. It wasn't easy because the eyepieces were rubber and Captain to Ozzie, what's our range supposed to be? We don't have a book that tells us what to do. We are writing the book. Usually 1,500 yards. And the captain says, Ozzie asked the captain, how close what's your range to the carrier? He said, 750 yards. Ozzie said, don't miss, Captain, don't miss. That's too close. A submarine torpedo travels 35 miles an hour. He wants to get, if he has to, now he's going to shoot at the carrier, the Soryu, but there's a ship alongside with the escort. There were 2 escorts along with the carrier. We got them both. We got the whole 3 of them. Now, how can we do that without getting killed ourselves? Captain says, make tubes 1, 2, and 3 ready. That was done. I'm still in the conning tower. I'm up on the bridge. I'm up in the control room. I wouldn't want to be any other place other than a forward room loading torpedoes. What's a torpedo made of? 900 pounds of Torpex on the nose. That's going to blow you to kingdom come. A large air flask, and then an engine in the back in the tailstock. Wow. When I first saw that, I said, that looks like the same engine I have on my lawnmower at home. He said, it's a 2-cycle engine. It gets the air from the air flask. And I said, but no way will a 2-cycle engine run underwater. It's impossible. Well, that's what the air flask is going to supply the air to the engine at the tailstock, and the exhaust is an 8 to 10 foot wide wake.
Wow.
Okay, now with his 3 torpedoes, he fired at the Soryu at 750 yards. 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit. The first 2 exploded, and that was enough to take her down. The third one hit, but it did not explode. We had a problem with a pin on the supplier changed the alloy, made it lighter. John Wayne in the movies tried to remedy the condition,
So you sunk her down, huh?
and we down went the Soryu, and now we had her escort. She had 2 of them to take care of the first one. And again, the skipper says, Ozzy, I only need 1 torpedo to get him, but I have to have him in the right position because I'm so close. If I miss with my torpedo, it's our last torpedo we're going to fire.
Did you get him?
Ozzy said again, Captain, don't miss. The way I'm going to get him to turn, the way I want him to be, is I'm going to let him see our periscope. Wow. And Ozzy didn't like this. The captain says, when he sees my scope, he's going to turn, but at 750 yards, he can't get away from my torpedo going 35 miles an hour. I'm going to hit him in the bow. I'm going to hit him in the side, and that's what I want. That's exactly what happened. And all the time, his buddy is looking at what's going on, and he decides to come and get us. But we managed to stay out of his range.
Good.
Until the next day. A few hours passed. When we surfaced again, Ozzy, he's still there waiting for us. I'm going to give him the same treatment I gave his buddy yesterday. If it worked then, maybe it'll work again. Just don't miss. Just don't miss. Captain, don't miss. Now I said, Ozzy was a camera nut. He was trying that. The skipper wanted 1 torpedo ready, and that was ready. And he was in his position. He was going to expose the periscope, and Ozzy must have finally determined how to fasten his camera on the periscope. So everything happened. He started to turn, and he fired the next torpedo, and he cut him in half. And he was so thrilled. The captain says, Ozzy, did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? I didn't see a thing, Captain. The camera saw everything.
Wow.
Which Brockman didn't know what's going on.
Wow, that's something. That's something, Hank.
I have it in a magazine. I have it in August of 1942. There's a picture of the first submarine taking a picture of the ship being sank.
Hank, if I could, do you mind if I pass it down to Matt now? We're going to get him to do an introduction as well. We're going to get more to your story, though, sir, okay? So that was quite an introduction. Thank you.
That's part of, I got some more stories.
Plenty of time.
But after I drink a little Pink Lady.
All right, so Matt, you're up.
My name is Matt Gutman. I'm 96 years old. I joined the Navy in June 15, 1943. They sent me then to pick up our boot camp at Sampson, New York. We spent 7 weeks there training, and then we graduated, and we were given a 7-day leave to visit our family and friends. That was the last time I seen him until the war ended. I then was sent to Evansville, Indiana, to pick up a ship. And when we got there, we found out it was an amphibious ship called LST 553, which stand for Landing Ship Tank. It was designed purposely to invade an island with 250 combat troops and 20 tanks we have in our tank there. Now, what happens on an invasion is our fleet are bombarding and that island that we're going to invade for hours. And then we're going to have a landing force. That's where I came in. I happened to be the boat coxswain taking 35 combat Marines in the third wave at Peleliu. That was a fierce battle. I think that was my fiercest battle in 6 different battles I was in. Anyway, we were, the big admirals and the generals decided that maybe they should just bypass that island because it was only 6 miles long and 2 miles wide. But it had an airfield in there. And that's what we wanted because we were always jumping islands, you know what I mean, to get closer to Japan. Anyway, they said that we could conquer that island within 3 days. They were wrong. It took us 24 days to invade and secure that island. Why? Because the Japanese were all held in the tunnels and caves.
Wow.
All our guns that were fighting there didn't do nothing. They were all hunkered down in their caves. They only come out when it was advantageous to them to win a battle. And that's why it took 24 days. Okay, we conquered that, we had that airstrip. Good, our Air Force could use that. Our next invasion was in the Philippines at Leyte. At Leyte, that was a big sea battle between our fleet. In the meantime, we were invading that island. Had that Japanese fleet won, they would have come down, they would have annihilated us because we only had aircraft guns on there. They could be a mile away and kill us. And hell, we'd have to get up close to them for our guns to even penetrate them. Well, it was to our advantage that our fleet won. From that battle, they decimated their fleet. Their fleet from there on was nothing. Well, we conquered that island.
Hey, Matt, I was going to ask you a question. How many different islands then did you guys
I invaded
invade?
6. I invaded, my ship and I, and the crew invaded 6 islands.
Wow.
The first was Peleliu.
Yep.
Then it was Leyte, Mindoro, Lincoln Gulf, and Subic Bay. And then the final, largest battle in the Pacific was Okinawa.
Wow.
And we invaded that on Easter Sunday morning, April 1st, 1945. I happened to be in the first wave with troops. And guess what? Nothing, no firepower came at us at all. We didn't understand that because every island we did, we always got firepower. They left all our troops land on that island. All of them, all the different waves. They in turn were in their tunnels.
Yeah.
That's what escaped everything. They only come out when they wanted to. And that, it took us 3 months to conquer Okinawa. Now, since we left Okinawa and went back to the Philippines at Buckner Bay, we were all getting ready to invade Japan itself. And that was scheduled for November the 1st. Never happened. It was estimated that if we invaded Japan, we'd have lost over 1 million men.
Wow.
Because all our civilians would be fighting us.
Yeah.
That didn't happen because they dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima on August the 6th. They didn't surrender. So we dropped the second bomb on Nagasaki.
Yes.
Those two bombs killed over 70,000 people in each one of those islands. The Japanese finally surrendered on August 14th. We were happy. We were in the Philippines in Buckner Bay.
I bet.
All our ships there shot rifles and bullets up in the air. And the admiral stopped that. He said, my God, the ship it's over. My God, we'll probably kill somebody. So we stopped.
Great.
We stopped.
That's great. All right.
Yeah, we stopped.
Thank you, Matt. Awesome. Charles, I'm going to ask you to give us an introduction as well.
All right, I'm Charles Brooking, United States Navy. I served on PT boats, motor torpedo boats, or as we PT men called it, plenty tough. I served in the South Pacific and basically hopped around from island to island, and my duty was gunner's mate, twin 50 caliber machine guns. That's about all I could.
And you said you were a 50 cal gunner, right, on the torpedo
Yes,
boat?
50 caliber.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to come to my right here. We'll start with Susan. Please introduce yourself and why you're here.
Well, my name is Susan Price. I am 63 years old. I am an Army veteran, the daughter of a Marine, and I am a Gold Star mother to Marine Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Michael Kennefick, who was killed in the Ganjgaw ambush September 8th, 2009, tied to 2 Living Medal of Honor recipients, Marine Dakota Meyer and Captain Will Swenson. I'm here because I am my son's voice. My son makes up the 1% of Americans who had given their life for our country so that the other 99% would have a voice.
Yes. Thank you very much. Hey, Alan, why don't you give us an introduction?
My name is Alan Moskin. I was born in Englewood, New Jersey. At 17, I graduated high school, started at Syracuse University. And when I hit 18, like most males at 18 in World War II, we got a draft notice from the government. It said, greetings. I always remember that word, like you were going to a wedding or bar mitzvah. I don't know why they picked the word greetings. It meant you reported for a physical exam. I passed the physical, went at the United States Army. Went down to Camp Blanding, the northern part of Florida, for 3+ months of infantry basic training. Like most of the northern boys, I never had a gun in my hand before. The southern boys were brought up hunting and fishing, but we had to learn how to shoot an M1 rifle, which was my baby in combat. Machine gun, a BAR, Browning automatic, learning. Basic training was learning how to kill or be killed, how to survive in combat. I can't make it any easier than that. Shipped overseas over the Atlantic Ocean, Liberty ship convoy. Those Liberty ships were not meant to be on the ocean, I can tell you that. They were bunted all around for close to 2 weeks. Every guy was on all fours going for both ends. I tell you, it wasn't pretty. Landed in Liverpool, England. Went across the channel into France. And they got sent from a replacement camp up to the front line to join the 66th Infantry Regiment, 71st Infantry Division, part of the 3rd Army, led by General George S. Patton himself. Our outfit fought in combat in the Rhineland campaign, the Central European campaign, and various places in in France and Germany and Austria, right up in the front lines. I was probably one of the second youngest, I think, in my whole division, still only 18. I lost a lot of buddies in every one of the battles against the Nazis that hit the youth and the Waffen-SS. War is hell. I tell everybody now when I speak. By the way, I didn't speak about this for 50 years after the end of the war, because I'm sure I was messed up with PTSD and nervous about speaking. I never heard the term PTSD in World War II. They go shell shock or battle fatigue, I think it was.
Yeah.
They act like you were crazy, whacked up, so they didn't know how to treat it. You had to fight your way through it. So I decided after the war ended, I was also a member of the Army of Occupation. I was almost going to leap out, but I got to say that near the end of the war, we were liberators. We liberated a sub-camp of Mauthausen called the Gunskirchenlager. And we entered that camp. It was the most horrific sight I've ever seen or ever hoped to see. The skeleton-like bodies all over the damn place. The people that were alive, if they weighed 70, 80 pounds, emaciated, sores all over the bodies, the stench. It's a sight you can never forget. I mean, every time I talk about it, I get the picture back of those poor souls, as my lieutenant kept saying. Oh my God, he said, look at these poor souls. After I got home, I was scared if I talked about it, I'd bring back all those nightmares. I'm sure we didn't know what PTSD was. They say shell shock, crazy.
That's right.
So I didn't want to talk about it because I was scared I'd bring back one was a member of the Army of Occupation. A lot of the guys next to me said that I was screaming in my sleep and shouting, and I remember sweating a lot. I guess I was going through PTSD, but we didn't know what that was in those days. So when I got home, I said, I'm not going to talk about it. I took a key, and I locked up that part of my brain, threw the key away. Anybody asked me what I did, I said I did my job, I fought in the war, that's all, that's it. And they got the message I wasn't going to talk about it for 50 years. And then in 1995, I moved up to Rockland County, where I live now. I'm a Jersey boy originally. And a lady at the local Holocaust Museum in Rockland County heard what I just told you. Somebody told her, I guess, that Moskin was a liberator. And she called me on the phone and said, Mr. Moskin, please, you got to speak to the young kid. They got to hear the story. And I said, I'm not speaking. I got a little rude, actually, because she shook me up, and I hung up the phone a few times. But she begged me to speak, said, try it one time. If it's too much for you, I'll never ask you to speak again. So I spoke for the first time in October of 1995. And baby, since that date, I've been a busy boy speaking all over the place.
That's right.
My daughter says, just Google my name and then tell the kids I'll see it all over the internet. It's like a calling with me now. I want the young people in particular to know what happened back then. So they got to make damn sure that what I saw back then never happens again.
That's right.
And that's why I'm going to continue to speak as long as God gives me the strength. Because these young people, they got to learn a little more about history and dates and things. I'm a little upset with our educational system. I don't want to be negative here, but a lot of these kids don't even know dates that we all knew. You know, Pearl Harbor and all that stuff. And I think we got to speak and let these kids know what happened and to make sure it never happens again.
Well, that's what we're doing here today, Alan. So, and just a little history with Alan and myself. He's the only person I'd known before this event. My wife, who's a school teacher in Washingtonville, New York, told me one day, you have to bring this guy to the base when I was still in active duty to speak to the troops because his message was so powerful. So I got in contact with Alan. We brought him into the base, and he was able to go a little bit more in depth with the men and women than he could with the students at the school, and I think it was good for him. But it was even better for us to have you there. So thank you, Bob. You're next.
I'm up, I guess. I'm Bob Smith. I served in Vietnam. I served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. The reason I served an extra year, my mother wrote me a letter saying that my brother was going to get drafted. So I had nobody at the time. I wasn't married or nothing. So I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. So I did an extra tour. But my brother flunked his draft. So I got stuck there. I went to Vietnam in 68, February, during Tet. It was an experience and a half for me. Trying to think here, going on like this here. Yeah. This is new for me here. I've been only speaking about the last 10 years, coming out of my shell, I want to say. You know, I had uncles served in World War II, the Navy and the Army, and they never spoke to me about it. We never spoke on each other. When I come home, my family never spoke, asked me what happened in Vietnam or anything like that. You know, war is hell, that's all I can say, you know.
Right.
I was a sergeant, ended up as a sergeant, squad leader in December 68, and I was a sergeant all the way through. I was infantry, and I was in charge of 10 guys, and my men were my family.
Oh, yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know? I mean, I worried about my men.
Yeah.
You know,
How old were you?
I was 18 years old.
And you were squad.
18.
You were squad leader.
I have a letter I'm going to,
Wow.
for Bob tomorrow, I want to read at the closing. I wrote home, it's called The Soldier's Last Words. I wrote it, a friend of mine, we both sat down, and he was my platoon leader, and he goes to me, he says, well, let's write, you know, first he was a wild guy, glory hound. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into this right now.
No, yeah.
But-
We can later.
Yeah, okay. But that was infantry. I'll leave it go with that till later if you want.
I'll tell you what, two Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star with 5 oak leaf clusters.
No,
Right?
4.
4.
Army
So you're 5.
Convoy.
All right.
Army Convoy.
All right.
Yeah, Army Convoy, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Unbelievable. All right, and then we're up to you, Carrie. Why don't you
Yes,
fill us in about yourself?
I'm Terry Rodemoyer. I was born in Bloomsburg in 1947. That makes me around 73 years old. And I finished high school and I wanted to become a pilot. So I went to the Air Force recruiter and he said, go to college, take all the math courses you can dig up before you, and once you come out of college, we'll join you, we'll go right to flight school. Well, I thought, boy, that's a long way to go. So one day I'm walking up Main Street in Bloomsburg, and there's a big sign outside the courthouse where the recruiting offices were. Fly in the Army with a high school diploma. Bingo, I was already qualified. I walked in and signed up right immediately. Got the basic training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I flunked my flight physical 3 times. Third time I said, why am I flunking this physical? And they said, you have astigmatism and you can't see well at night. Anyway, that moved me from the front seat into the back seat. I became a crew chief on a UH-1 Huey gunship. And when I first got there, we had 14 rockets, 6 M60 machine guns, 2 on either side and 1 out each door. We later upgraded to 2 miniguns, which are 3,000 round a minute Gatling style guns. And with 2 of them on the ship, we had 6,000 rounds a minute. And that's 100 rounds every second. A couple second bursts, we can put a bullet in every square foot of a football field. So we didn't need to worry about don't miss, don't miss. We'd hit every time. And on top of that, we'd take our, normally a tracer every 5th round in order to check where your bullets are going. Well, with our door-mounted machine guns, we use solid tracers. Every bullet was a tracer, and we could walk that wherever we wanted to. Didn't really need to aim, have any sights or anything like that. So I was in the Central Highlands, a very beautiful place. You get up to sometimes 130 during the day, drop to 56 degrees at night, but it felt like 50 below zero. I was in 4 campaigns, counteroffensive 3, the Tet Offensive, counteroffensive 4, and counteroffensive 5. So there's 4 stars on my Vietnam badge. Basically, when we got asked about this, you wanted to know about the Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive was horrible, and we'll go into that a little bit later probably, but the worst for me was Dak To. Dak To was the day I saw a Chinook, one of the double-bladed helicopters, flying in while we were refueling and arming under fire. And I thought, why? This is a bad time to bring ammo in, you know, and being up there. And it turned out, the closer it got, there was arms and legs hanging out of the cargo baskets. That was the only way they could get the dead out of the field, by throwing them in a cargo basket. The 173rd Airborne Brigade, 85% of the men were either killed or wounded. It totally wiped them out. For now, the only other thing is I have a single Purple Heart, wound in my left knee. We were pulling a patrol out. The patrol had already been on the slicks. They were going, and we were just laying down cover fire, and I got hit in the left knee. And for now, I think we can just leave that at that.
You have the air medal, right? With
Yes, air medal with 8 oak leaf
8
clusters.
oak. That's a lot.
That
of
works
medal.
out, if you work it down, it's around almost 250 combat hours.
That's a lot of hours.
That's why I don't have a whole lot of photos. Too busy doing other stuff.
All right. So we're gonna go over to you next, Lou. Tell us a little bit.
So, you know, I don't have all the experiences you gentlemen have, or you have, but my father was in the infantry in World War II, and he served under General Mark Clark in the 5th Army, and was with Clark when they made their way up Italy toward ultimately capturing Rome. But the reason I think that Bob asked me to come here is, among other things, I am a writer, and I wrote a book called In the Cauldron: Terror, Tension, and the American Ambassador's Struggle to Avoid Pearl Harbor. And that book is the story of Joseph Grew, who was America's ambassador to Japan in Tokyo. And it traces his effort to try to orchestrate an agreement between Japan and the United States to avoid the war he saw coming. And eventually he saw that those efforts were not going to succeed. And then he tried to warn President Roosevelt and Secretary of State Cordell Hull about the war that he thought was very imminent. And in November 1941, only a few weeks before Pearl Harbor, he wrote a telegram to Secretary of State Cordell Hull to warn him that Japan was prepared to launch a suicidal war against the United States, and that armed conflict would come with dangerous and dramatic suddenness. But back in Washington, people thought it would be utterly stupid for Japan to attack the United States, because the United States was so much larger in terms of population and resources. So Grew's warning was given very little credibility. And that's part of the story that is told in my book.
And here's your question, weren't they negotiating with our government when Pearl Harbor was bombed?
That's a good question, and the story is that the Japanese were negotiating. The Japanese, I think, there were elements in Japan who really wanted to work out some agreement with the United States, but as a practical matter, the United States was not really interested in having an agreement with Japan. Cordell Hull never thought, as a practical matter, there would ever be an agreement with Japan, and he was told by President Roosevelt and the military chiefs when the Japanese representatives came to Washington in April of 1941 to negotiate an agreement. And Roosevelt and the military chiefs told Hull to drag out the conversations with the Japanese as long as possible, in part because in the spring of 1941, America's military capabilities were woefully inadequate. And so Roosevelt and the military chiefs wanted to drag out the conversations with the Japanese to give the United States time to bolster its military capabilities and to avoid a war in the Pacific for which the United States was not prepared. And so that's part of the story. By by November, December of 1941, the Japanese had realized that the United States was not really interested in an agreement, and they felt that they were either going to succumb to American pressure or, as I said, launch a suicidal war against the United States. And given their pride and the samurai perspective they had, they decided they'd rather face annihilation than endure the humiliation of succumbing to American pressure.
Wow.
Great.
I'd like to interject something. I'm a Pearl Harbor survivor,
I know.
and as you certainly know, Japan had prepared for this for 12 years. They had prepared for this war for 12 years. Don't you think that if they had delayed it, it would have happened later?
It's, to speculate about the future, about what would happen, I would say this about that. The Japan always regarded to some extent the United States as an enemy.
Yeah.
That's true. And there were elements in Japan, in the military, who were eager for war. That much is true too.
That's right.
But there were a lot of elements in the Japanese society and government who were not. And the person who planned the Pearl Harbor attack was a guy named General Yamamoto.
No, I know him well.
Yeah, okay. So Yamamoto is the one who urged and tried to push this Pearl Harbor strategy.
Yeah.
But he did it in part because what I mentioned a moment ago, they saw the writing on the wall that the United States was never going to enter into an agreement. The United States had imposed sanctions, and Japan had a choice of, from their perspective, Japan had a choice of just succumbing to American pressure or fighting this suicidal war. But even Yamamoto was very skeptical about launching a war against the United States. And in September of 1941, he told his superiors that although he was pushing this Pearl Harbor strategy, he said a war with so little chance to succeed should never be fought. But at the end of the day, and he was supported by that by the emperor, but like I said, at the end of the day, they just decided that they just decided that it was do or die from their perspective. Either they would turn into a third-rate power. From their perspective, they felt they would turn into a third-rate power if they just did nothing, or they could hopefully strike a blow, and maybe they would have an advantage in the war. But the person, it's interesting to note that Hirohito, who is the emperor, he was really, I think, genuinely interested in trying to avoid a war. And when Tojo became prime minister in October 1941, Tojo is well known for being a warmonger, and he was ultimately a war criminal. But in October of 1941, when he first became prime minister, he regarded, as many Japanese did, the emperor as God. And so the emperor was revered. And Hirohito told Tojo to do anything and everything he can to work out some kind of amicable relationship with America. And eventually they persuaded Hirohito that the United States was never going to enter into an agreement with them. And they had this choice of either succumbing to American pressure or launching a war. And so on December 1st, 1941, Hirohito sanctioned the attack at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Yamamoto was praised, for his victory at Pearl Harbor. And he said, well, it says, I've studied in the United States. He said, it's a great industrial nation. I think we will awaken, sleep and shine.
Right.
And you know as well as I do that they had built a replica of Pearl Harbor for the practice zone for 2 years. Every pilot knew exactly what his target was and where it was.
Well, I don't think, with all due respect, I don't think it was 2 years. I mean, here, Yamamoto's plan to attack Pearl Harbor was not really approved until the fall of 1941. He was one who was interested in it, but a lot of the people in the Navy and the military, but especially the Navy, were very skeptical, and it took a lot of effort for him to be able to do that. But here's an interesting footnote to all that. Yamamoto planning Pearl Harbor is that Yamamoto served as the naval attaché in the Japanese embassy in the United States in the 1920s. And while he was there in the United States, There was a front page article in the New York Times Book Review section in 1926 about a novel written by an English correspondent whose name was Bywater. And this guy Bywater had written a novel which revolved around a Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor. So, you wonder whether he saw that and
piqued his interest.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the general was right. They did awake a sleeping giant, boy,
That's
didn't
what I was
they?
going to just say.
They sure did.
Who said that? Somebody
Yeah,
said to sleeping giant. Which leader was it?
Yamamoto, right?
Yeah, he must have, yeah.
He did.
I remember
he
that.
He woke you guys, let me tell you.
I want to touch on
He says
one
you're going to
thing.
awaken a sleeping giant.
Lou. My name is Lou.
Lou, we were on our way.
That's what people call me when they like me.
Okay, Lou. We were on our way from when the war ended in Europe. We were on our way to go to Japan.
Uh-huh.
And the communication wasn't like today, so we heard that we dropped a bomb on Hiroshima, and we all looked at it. That's got to be a mistake. We don't drop a bomb or something, atomic bomb, and that's not us. I mean, all the guys, my officers and everything else. And then, we heard when they turned us around to go back to Europe. And then we heard about Nagasaki, that we dropped another bomb. And we said, oh, geez. And a lot of the comment, to be honest with you, initially was, we don't do something like that, because they showed the newsreels of those people looking like they were burned, and it really upset us a lot, and said, how the hell? But then as I thought about it, and most of the guys, and we discussed this later on, that in retrospect, it ended the war, that Truman had a hell of a decision to make, and it wasn't an easy one, but that war probably, the Japanese were not meant to surrender, and they felt that we'd have to invade the mainland. That would have gone on for who knows what, and how many thousands. So I think in retrospect, my feeling was that maybe it was the right thing to do to probably bring the war to an end.
Well, let me, apropos of that, I would say two things, is that, first of all, you're quite right. I think Truman wrestled with that decision.
Right.
Because of what you just said about the moral perspective of inflicting so much injury on the Japanese population.
Right.
But again, he ultimately decided, as you say, that it was going to save hundreds of thousands of American lives.
Right.
And he ultimately decided that that was more, killing Japanese civilians, as abhorrent as that was,
Right.
It was better than the choice of sacrificing American lives. But here's the other interesting thing. It goes back to the Japanese perspective, which was driving the attack at Pearl Harbor, is that the Japanese, as I say, if they had a choice in 1941, they were saying to themselves, rightly or wrongly, we have a choice. We can either succumb to American pressure, economic pressure, and become a third-rate country, or we can launch a suicidal war against the United States, and who knows, maybe luck will be on our side. And they decided that they would rather face annihilation than suffer the humiliation of succumbing to American pressure. And the only person after Nagasaki, the Japanese military and the government, the civilian government, the Japanese had a strange government, and their military and the civilian parts of the government were not under a unified command except through the emperor. But both the civilian government and the military in Japan, even after Nagasaki, wanted to continue fighting, even though they knew Japan was facing complete ruin. And the only thing that changed things was the emperor. And the emperor said, I am not going to sit here and watch my country be annihilated. And the emperor was the one who took the unusual step of saying, notwithstanding the advice of his government, that we are going to surrender. We were not going to witness the annihilation or destruction of Japan.
That was Hirohito?
Hirohito, yes.
Great. So thank you very much for that. What I'd like to do is just, again, bring everybody back. We're here, Kingston, New York, at the Historical Person Home. Behind us, you see some beautiful artwork by Ray Simon. If you look here over my left, you see the beautiful picture here that the original is actually at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. And I'm here with our World War II heroes, our Vietnam veteran heroes, our Gold Star mom, and our resident expert and author. And as you see, on my left here, I have all of our Navy, our salty Navy guys here. We split them up. And on my right, it worked out perfectly with the Army, our grungy Army. But you were in the Army, man. So this works out perfectly.
Aren't really Marines yet.
Yeah. But I do have a couple questions I'm going to ask, specific people, and we'll let it kind of go back and forth. But first question I have, and I'll look to the Navy side here. I'm going to look to you here, Matt.
Yes.
What are you most proud of for your time in service?
Well, like I said, I joined when I was 18. I just come out of high school. I didn't know nothing about the Navy. And I had two brothers in the service prior to World War II. One was a Navy and the other was in the Army. And while I was in junior high school, I used to wear my brother's Navy cap, the white one. Went to school with it. So I favored the Navy. That's why I joined the Navy. My enlistment was for 6.5 years. I wanted to be in the Navy because if I'd have been drafted, they would have probably drafted me. I didn't have no choice then. Yeah. They would have drafted me in the Army and Marines, and I didn't want that.
We all go in the Army.
So I went in the Navy. Right. Now, what I've learned a lot. I've worked my way up from a seaman to chief petty officer. It took me 16 years to become a chief petty officer, and I served for 22 years. The remainder I was a chief. And that was my goal. Any man on the deck force as a seaman, if he wants to make a career, he wants to be up there as a chief. Our chief boatswain mate, which I was the leading chief on that ship. Now, Hank was a chief torpedoman's mate. We had chief of gunner's mates. We had other chiefs. But the senior chief on the ship was a boatswain because he'd come up the hard way without any schooling. And it took years because you just couldn't jump from seaman up to chief. You had to have a certain amount of years to advance, and then you had to pay a test. You had to pass the test. If you didn't pass the test, you weren't elevated. So it took a long time, and that's the pride I have now that I succeeded doing that without a college education. I got an education in the Navy.
Excellent. Is it true that in the Navy, once you make chief, you eat a lot better than the rest of the sailors?
No.
All right. That's what I heard.
Now, let me correct that. The submariners, they did have the best food.
Yeah.
We ate the junk. They had the best food.
All you gotta do is open the door and sit there.
I'm going to throw it to this side, so I'll ask one of you two, what are you most proud of in your time?
Oh, me?
Yeah, I'll go with you, Bob.
Who, me? Give me two pronouns.
Go ahead, Roddy.
Give me two pronouns. Who, me? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Bob. You're the
Oh,
last.
me?
proud, yeah.
Okay. Most proud I was to achieve what I
don't know where it is.
what I done in Vietnam, saving many of my friends' lives. But proud to be in the uniform until I came home.
Yeah.
I gotta go to head.
Until I came home, but
Yeah.
to encounter what we encountered, I don't know if you want to say this on paper or what,
Yeah. Just to have gotten through what you got through.
Yeah.
Be proud. So I know you said you had a full career.
Yes.
How long did you serve in the military?
I was 2 years active and 8 years reserve.
Okay. How many years were you?
3 years.
And your son was a gunny sergeant?
He was 12 years.
12 years?
I want to say one thing. I want to emphasize this in my own opinion. World War II, the patriotism was so sky high in this country.
Very much.
When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, guys were lying about their age at 15 and 16, running to the draft ports to fight. When I tell these young kids today when we speak how strong we wanted to fight for the country, the greatness of this country, they look at me like you wanted to fight. I wish I could feel the patriotism again
Let me add to
we
that
had
if I
then.
will. When the men went to war, the women stopped in and went to the factories
Absolutely
and helped us
true.
build it.
The whole country was together.
I really commend those women.
Right.
And those families.
I agree.
We were all together.
Absolutely.
All together.
Absolutely.
To win that war.
That's right. And I just wish I don't feel I'll be honest with you, I don't feel a patriotism like we had back then. It's just something hard to put into words.
Yeah.
This is a different.
It's a
Well,
different
we did-
generation.
Especially after Afghanistan.
After what's happened recently with Afghanistan, I know that kind of reopened some wounds with a lot of Vietnam veterans.
Yes, they
hearing
got
what
treated
happened,
badly when it
happened after
What
we
a
left
disgrace
Afghanistan
that
or on our way out.
Yeah.
Is there care to
About 11 years,
remark about that?
11 years in Vietnam,
Right.
58,723 lives lost in Vietnam, women and men and women.
Yeah.
And they're still dying on a daily basis from stuff we brought home, and Agent Orange, the gift that keeps on
Yeah.
giving.
That's right.
But the only thing I can say that I'm proud of about Vietnam is the job the gunships did, kept a lot of names off that wall in Washington DC.
Amen.
Yeah.
Because that's all we did. Didn't matter what the weather was. Didn't matter where it was. They called, we hauled. I've flown in fog so thick you didn't know where the hell you were. We flew in heavy rain. And I mean, we flew, you ain't lived till you heard a 55 millimeter shell crackle underneath your helicopter as you're flying.
Yeah.
Have something, Lou?
Well, yes, I wanted to add something of historical perspective in light of these comments. In late 1930s and 1940 and early 41, President Roosevelt was more focused on Hitler than he was on Japan, because
right.
he was focused on saving Great Britain, and he saw what Hitler was doing, and he really wanted to get into war and fight Hitler. But one of the things Roosevelt knew, or sensed, was that as much as he wanted to go into war, he said, I am never going to be able to sustain the effort it requires to get into the war and succeed unless I have the support of the people. And isolationism was still strong. And so it wasn't until Pearl Harbor happened when he suddenly had, because of that event, suddenly had people supporting American involvement in the war. And I think your comments about the fact that people supported the war made a huge difference. And I think to some extent our experience with Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan, I think that, I don't think there was the same level of support for the war that there was World War II. And I think that made it more difficult to prosecute the war.
I want to add something about President Roosevelt. When I was a kid, in my neighborhood, everywhere, we loved President Roosevelt.
Yes, he
I mean,
was.
he had a voice. He's on the radio. He spoke. Everybody listened. It was a love for President Roosevelt. But unfortunately, as I got older, and as a liberator of a concentration camp, I found out that President Roosevelt knew about those concentration camps. It wasn't a secret, and decided that it wasn't a priority. He's got other things to do about the economy, apparently, in the country. And that was a big blow to us, because the millions of people that get slaughtered now, the answer is maybe bomb the railroad tracks leading to Auschwitz, and people would have died, but he'd have saved an awful lot of lives if he took a stronger stance on what was going on in Europe. And a lot of the people in my faith in particular feel that we were disappointed in his attitude about what was going on in the concentration camp.
Could I say something?
Absolutely.
I was 17 when I went in. I
Yeah.
never had a chance to finish high school, and my father had to sign off for me.
That's right.
And he took me to Wilkesboro, Pennsylvania, to the recruiting station. I was bound and determined I was going to join the Marine Corps because they were a gung-ho unit
Right.
as far as I was concerned.
Right.
But he said, no, well, he wasn't a military person, but he said to me, son, I want to ask you a question. Where do the Marines and the Army sleep during combat And what condition are they in? He said, usually a foxhole and it usually got
In the
water
ditch.
in it.
Yeah.
He said, in the Navy, you usually have a dry bunk and 3 square meals a day.
And you have a
So I joined the Navy.
And you have a little mattress.
It's very similar to you. I joined the military at 17 and my mother signed me away. I joined the Air Force because I knew we slept in hotels.
That's right.
Versus ditches or in
Let me
hot
add
boxes.
something. The Air Force had the best meals of
Oh,
any.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I got something to say about that.
Absolutely.
They did.
We went to, when we got close to Pleiku,
Yeah.
I mean, within 100 miles.
Right.
Close, okay? We would fly there for lunch at the
Yeah.
Pleiku Air Base. First time there, it was pork, which was the same menu for the Army.
Yeah.
Army, 2 pork slices about that big, tough as hell. Navy, 4, or Air Force, 4 beauties. Mashed potatoes
Right.
with good gravy, and I tasted the mashed potatoes. And I said, them buggers are flying real potatoes
real.
over here and making mashed potatoes out of.
They had the best.
So,
Oh, boy.
I asked one of the cooks, I said, where do you guys get your potatoes? He says, we get the same ones you guys get. I said, you're full of crap. I said, we get
prepared.
these little 3/4 inch pieces of cardboard. They put them in a pot, put some water in and boil them for 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah.
And they pull them out and they put them on your plate and they taste like little wet pieces of cardboard. I said, yours taste like mashed potatoes. He said, yes, we do ours in pressure cookers.
Oh.
And it whips them right back
Yeah,
into
right.
real potatoes.
So I'm going to ask Jack. Jack, what are you most proud of from your time in service?
Well, I can bring out on one point. I want to make one point, add to what the chief said a while ago, though. The military didn't win this war by themselves. The civilian population
Yes.
Back us up, that back
Help,
us up.
right.
played such a great part.
Yeah.
They've got to be commended for that.
That's why it's the greatest generation.
Yes. Following Pearl Harbor, I've had people, so many people ask me, so why did I want to go to Midway? For one word, revenge.
That's right. Yep.
We took a beating at Pearl Harbor and we returned the favor at Midway.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was in the aircraft. I'm PP-23, my squadron went to Midway April 26, 1942. I was in the aircraft and reported the aircraft, the Japanese fleet coming to Midway, 450 miles northeast of Midway. The first aircraft that spotted the Japanese fleet reported, but their message was garbled. My message went through. And, you know, I was really disappointed when, after September the 2nd last year, when our own Secretary of the Navy praised every unit in the Navy except the patrol planes. Everyone. This war at Midway could have been so vastly different if we had not reported their position.
Yeah. Great point.
Can I ask Jack a question? So when you say you were a Pearl Harbor survivor, I have 2 questions. Where were you on that morning of December 7th?
I was on Fort Island. I was the PBY crew member.
Oh, I'm sorry?
PBY, the aircraft.
But where were you? I mean, I understand, because that's the second part of my question is, when did you first realize that the Japanese planes were coming toward Pearl Harbor?
I had the duty that day. When we fell in for muster, we heard a screaming aircraft, and moments later, a terrible explosion. We ran outside. The first bomb that fell in Pearl Harbor hit BP-21's hangar, which was 100 yards from mine. We seen all the aircraft in the sky with the rising sun insignia, but you immediately what happened.
Okay.
It was an early Sunday morning, right?
Yeah.
Very early Sunday morning.
That's right.
It was about 5 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Right.
5 minutes to 8.
Right.
Now, did you try, when the bombs, did you try and get into your plane to take off?
No, half of our aircraft are on fire.
I see.
PBY, of course, has the trailing edge, half of the trailing edge of the wingspan is canvas. When the bomb dropped on P-21's hangar, half of our aircraft are on fire.
I see.
The captain's aircraft was in the hangar undergoing a 30-hour check. It was ready for flight, loaded with two 1,000-pound bombs. The captain and his crew flew for 19 hours looking for the fleet. Found nothing, of course.
Wow. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you, Gold Star mom here, what are you most proud of with your son's service?
Well, my son was a stellar Marine and a stellar son, and he just was a good man, and he cared about the men next to him, and he did everything that he could in his power to have their back and to mentor. And he told me once, he said, "Mama, I know how to build young men and women up without breaking them down." So I'm just proud that he was a good human being and a contribution to humanity.
You said how many years was he
He,
serving?
just over 12 years, he was to be a lifer, and he had 2 Purple Hearts and 2 Bronze Stars, highly decorated intelligence Marine for
He
Recon.
must have made gunny very young.
He was 30 and a half years old, and when he passed away, he was 3 credits shy of his master's degree.
All right.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask this gentleman one more question.
Sure.
I know you're well aware of this, but prior to Pearl Harbor, FDR was briefed every morning on their position when they left Japan. We had 5 listening stations set up around the world. 1 in San Francisco, 2 in Seattle, 1 in Wake Island, 1 in the Philippines. By triangulation of those transmissions, he was briefed on the exact position. Now, the speculation is today that he wanted this to happen so we could help the British.
Well, I mean, I think the speculation is that Roosevelt wanted Pearl Harbor to happen so he could get involved in the war.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't think, I'll respond this way. There's no question Roosevelt wanted to get involved in the war.
Yeah.
He did not want to get involved in the war with Japan. As I mentioned, his focus was Germany.
That's right.
He wanted to fight Germany. He didn't want
That's
to fight
right.
Japan.
That's the reason he wanted to save Britain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But there's no, I mean, I've looked at all the most personal notes, handwritten notes of conversations, everything. There's no evidence that President Roosevelt or his cabinet knew in advance that Japan was going to attack Pearl Harbor. There's a lot of books out there and articles about people, radar and things like that, that they heard the transmissions with the Japanese, that they knew what the Japanese were doing. There's a lot of information, articles, and discussion and speculation about that. And I'm not an expert on that, and it may be that some people had a fix on what Japan was actually doing. But I can tell you, Roosevelt did not know, and it's just logic. If Roosevelt had known that Japan was going to attack Pearl Harbor, and if we said, "Oh, this is going to be a great excuse for me to get involved in the war," well, what he could have done is he could have made sure that the people in Pearl Harbor, the military, the Navy and the Army, were well prepared so that when Japan did attack, they could decimate the Japanese forces. And he would still, and so the United States would come through unscathed, would look good, and he would still have the same excuse of feeling that we had been attacked and could go forward. But instead, the people in Pearl Harbor, the military and the Army, were not prepared. The military commander, Walter Short, and husband Kimmel, the head of the Navy, they were going out to play golf on the morning of
They
December.
were playing golf, and for years I blamed Kimmel and Short for this, but
Yeah, a lot of-
out, they didn't know any more about it than I did.
Well, I'm just
Can I
saying,
interject as a Vietnam veteran?
May I
We
add,
kind of got the same military leaders right now we had back then.
may I add something to that Pearl Harbor?
Sure.
Had Roosevelt known ahead of time, he would have he would inform our fleet to disperse.
Right.
We wouldn't be caught in that
Right.
harbor with all them ships.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
He
He
would
could have done
disperse our Navy.
Right, he would have done things, well, see,
Well,
the other thing
sure.
is, he would have done things.
I don't think he knew it all.
No, I
Yeah,
don't.
well, I can tell you that I've looked at these private communications.
Right.
Nobody, there's no information that he knew specifically. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is, interestingly enough, again, bearing in mind Roosevelt really wanted to fight Germany,
Boy,
we never really declared war on Germany. What happened was, after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor,
they
Hitler
war on
declared
us.
war on us.
well, I was gonna say that in my speech.
Right.
When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United
That's
States.
I know, they gave-
Right.
that
3
was-
days later.
That was the gift, that's what, Roosevelt
Right.
was happy about that.
Right.
All right.
Well, there's also, I read stories about Russia was worried about being attacked by the United States, or being attacked by Japan, and they were informed, don't worry about Japan, they have their eyes elsewhere. I don't know dates or anything, but it'd be interesting to find out when that happened.
I never heard that.
No, I didn't either.
Could have been possible.
Yeah.
It's true.
Could be.
I mean, you've said it multiple times. War is hell.
It
Right?
is.
War is hell.
It is.
And all generations of war have suffered losses. I myself and my base, we lost 3 airmen killed in action. I'm going to ask you, Alan. You know, after all these years, what still keeps you up at night?
Watching Turner classic movies.
Turner Classic.
Okay.
You go to bed by 10 o'clock because it's over by
See,
that
I
time.
like the old time movies with
Yeah.
Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart and all
That suits him.
I get hooked on it. Next thing I know, it's 1:32 in the morning.
Okay.
That's how I answer that question. But listen,
All right.
I always, as we said here,
What was the hardest part then of your time? What is that memory that you just can't shake? I know you know.
By listening
you did
to his
touch on
wife.
it.
the hardest, I think I pretty well adjusted after a period of time getting back home and getting back to college and getting to law school, practicing law and getting back into this. You know, I didn't dwell on it after that. I know my mother kept saying a few times that I always say that she saw me, she was a smoker, unfortunately, got up during the night to smoke. And she saw me in the kitchen, always with the refrigerator door open, staring inside. I don't remember that, but apparently, maybe I was looking for food. I don't know what I was doing. You never saw a refrigerator in combat, so.
Right, no.
So there's few odd things she said that I did that she was a little nervous about. And I guess I also shouted out the first year, so some names of buddies, and I don't remember that, but you know, it dissipated after a period of time like anything else. And when I got back to college and law school, being immersed in books and
Oh,
studying.
then you had to.
I
You had
didn't
other
have time.
interests. You had other interests.
That's
then.
right, my mind got off into other things. I think you have to get your mind
Right.
working on other things. And I do that today too by trying to get out and talk to veterans and veteran organizations. And
Great.
I always say when you get older, don't sit around the house all day long.
No.
I don't care
Do
what
something.
you do. Meals on Wheels, that's a good organization.
My father, when I caught him watching standing, he says, "What are you standing for? Go do something."
So I'm gonna.
Even if it's wrong.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask.
Even if it's wrong.
Bob, this might be hard, but I'm going to ask you the same question. You know, what is it that keeps you up at night from your time?
I have a lot of flashback nightmares of,
You still do?
yeah.
Is that right?
I take medication for it, I'll be honest, but I'm diagnosed 80% PTSD
Yeah.
Right.
through the military.
You got a group that meets?
Yeah, every 2 weeks. But the worst thing keeps me up is I was gonna share. I never shared this before to nobody. It was a 4-day firefight in Vietnam.
Oh, man.
4 days, and I don't remember sleeping at all in them days. But a lot happened in that 4 days. I was going to tell Bob tomorrow, share this if he wanted to, you know. You know, I'd seen a lot of stuff in 2 years' time. You know, I wasn't in the back. The only time I had hot meals was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And with my wounds, my first time, and I went to Cameron Bay. After 2.5 months, you know, I went back out in the field. They said light duty. I was point man.
Yeah.
But,
Light duty, that was light duty.
oh man,
He took
But
point.
I'm no better than nobody else. It's just the way the cards fell. Medals don't mean nothing to me.
Right.
You know, I feel my brothers that paid the sacrifice should have got them medals, not me. I'm nobody special. I'm just a soldier doing my job.
That's why you're special.
We're survivors, we're not heroes.
That's right.
Can I say something?
Heroes have the white crosses.
When I was on duty in the Navy, I never thought about medals. We didn't think about medals. We were too darn engaged in fighting a war.
Yeah.
We didn't know about medals. When I came home and I got my DD 214, it told me on there what medals I was entitled to. I didn't even know that
Yeah.
until I read it. You know?
Well, you know,
So I never worried about
I
medals.
want to
True.
share something with you, World War II guys.
Yeah.
When I was in Nam,
Can I say something?
yeah, go ahead.
Jack and I and another individual were Hollywood movie stars.
Oh, yeah?
All right.
How much
Well,
money
they-
you make?
The movie Midway wanted us, 'cause we were
What?
there.
We were invited to Hollywood to see the premiere of the movie.
Yeah, well,
Excuse me, go ahead now.
we were there, and at the red carpet treatment, we got that. As a matter of fact, every affair that I was involved in, they made a movie of. My submarine was extra large. The next one, after the Midway, was Making an Island, and John Wayne was in that, not John Wayne, but Randolph Scott was in that movie called Making Island, which we were a part of that, our submarine. We actually, we had large guns, and we were responsible for blowing up a lot of what the Japanese were using. The third one was I liked, and yes and no. There were French-speaking missionary nuns, 24 of them, on a little island called Thibault, which was right next to Bougainville. Now, I was contacted, my daughter lives in California. They're doing a documentary right now on the, and I'll tell you about the French-speaking missionary nuns that we had to take off of Bougainville. Everything on a submarine, if anything, happens at night. Now, the ladies had a land trek from Thibault onto Bougainville. They did that all right. Everything depended on a little pen light, which meant one pen light from us, one shot of light from them, which is supposed to indicate that they're in the right spot, and so are we. We are always on landings. We make ourselves so vulnerable. We run till we run aground till the bow hits, and then now to get out of there, we got to back up and turn around and get the hell out. So when these lights, so the ladies came on board, and our chief of the boat and another. They went ashore to help them, and the natives. Now, for ladies to get onto us, can you imagine if you ever saw a submarine? It's not easy to get on. A submarine, the superstructure comes down on the round part of it. So the natives made makeshift ladders to get them on board. Now, what I was doing there, I can tell you, actually, I had two of us, another sailor and myself. we were to guard the submarine from anybody coming and blowing us up. In other words, I had a Thompson machine gun, he had a Thompson machine gun. The number of people that we had to evacuate, they asked for help. There were 24 French-speaking nuns. 4 of them were from California. In addition to the nuns, there was a husband and wife, and they had a child. The nuns were going to take those people. The child was about 2 or 3 years old. Well, he didn't like what was going on. This kid. And when the ladies start to come up and we get them down now, I'm sure these ladies didn't know how to get up and down ladders. But the kid, they handed me the kid, and I took him to where the one hatch was, and I was gonna put somebody to take him. When he saw the red light, he must have thought it was fire, and he let out a scream that the whole island heard it. And the captain, I heard the captain on the bridge said, "Shut that kid up, shut him up." And that's when I dropped him. I was holding his feet, but there was somebody down there to catch this young fellow. And he could yell all he wanted then, it didn't make any difference. And in addition to the nuns in this couple, there was a mother with her daughter. And she was begging the nuns to take, she didn't want to go, but take my daughter. Her daughter was about 14, 15, a beautiful lady. And the nuns still didn't want to take, she said, "You don't have to take me, but take my daughter. I know what they're gonna, when they find out what went on, they're gonna be very, not kind to the Japs were not kind to anybody." And then I heard the captain again on the bridge. He says, "If they don't take her, we'll take her. Nobody stays behind." So we had ourselves a nice young girl, but we managed to convince the nuns and to take the mother and this beautiful, her daughter.
That's great.
And then it was time to back out.
All right.
And now there was a vessel in the distance looking at all this, and they were just waiting their time to blow us to Kingdom Come. So we started to back out, and when they saw, our guns we had 6-inch guns, and when they were deployed and they saw them, they didn't want any part of the scrape to get in with us, so we quickly turned around and got out of there. And the next stop was Espiritu Santos. I keep saying that the nuns didn't like to be on a submarine. Well, a lot of people don't like a submarine. Captain says, everybody's gonna get off of the ship. And we're gonna have a luau. The nuns are gonna get off. And so we did. Oh, they loved that. And he said to the ladies, he addressed the ladies that you don't have to go on board anymore. I have a surface ship that's going to Darwin, and he'll take you. He'll take all of you, and you don't have to go to,
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
That's great.
And you know the.
What was the other one? The other lady and daughter, was she missionaries?
No, she was not a missionary. They're doing a documentary now, right now. Well, they did everything that is written about her. I'm involved in it somewhere around.
Yeah, but what was she doing there on the island?
What? Who? No, she wasn't on the island.
Oh, I think
came
so.
with.
Oh.
She came with Espiritu Santos was not involved in the war
Got
at
it.
all. There was no fighting.
They were
No
never-
Japs.
Yeah.
No Japs at all. But
Well,
anyway,
I'm going to ask Charles a question then, if that's okay. Charles, I want to bring it to you to ask you, what keeps you up at night, after your time at war?
Any dreams?
Thinking back of some things that happened,
Yeah.
and I get awake at night, and
What brings me up?
Chris will come over, and she said, "What's the matter?" I don't know. I just let out a scream.
The Sullivan brings me, the Sullivan.
The Sullivan brothers.
Mom lost 5 boys.
That's right.
Yeah.
I lost a good friend, one of the Marines. We made, well, he wanted to operate everything I was operating, and he had it, his time was to go ashore at Tarawa.
Yeah.
And when they brought him on board, I happened to be underneath there where I didn't see any blood, but I felt the stickiness. We put him in the wardroom, turned him over. Here is my Marine I made friend. I'll never forget his name, Harry Merrick. I want you all to know that. I feel so sad for her. We talked about what we're going to do after the war, and go to school, and when they turned him over, he had a pencil wound in the front of his chest and a big blowout in the back. When I went to come, he was in the captain's bunk, and I came to see him, and the pharmacist mate, Doc Potts, he said, "Hank, Harry didn't make it. He just died. He died a few minutes ago." Not only that, I was one of them that buried Harry. A submarine doesn't have things to bury somebody. You
Yeah,
know,
you had some,
Yeah.
how long ago was that?
That was at, well, that was at Tarawa, and he's buried at the Marianas Trench.
Well, the point that I want to make on that is over 70 years ago.
Oh,
And Dick Donald, a great friend of ours that's gone, it's the same way, 70 years since it happened, and every time they repeat it, they well up with tears. That's PTS.
Yeah.
It's post-traumatic stress. It's no longer a disorder because it is a natural reaction to trauma that the body reacts to when the trauma occurs. But that's everything, I don't care, it never leaves you.
Yeah.
You learn how to live with it.
And it's
Sometimes
not
it
a
slips
weakness,
in.
and it's not a weakness.
Right, sometimes it slips in no matter how hard you try. I was being awakened at night by the dream the day I was wounded. I went through months of therapy that I can talk about it. I still have the dream once in a while. It doesn't wake me up. And I still have other dreams that are still bad, but they aren't bad enough to the point that I need to get therapy for them.
I think one of the worst things that I recall is the fact when refueling one of the boats, we refueled the 55-gallon drums with a hand crank.
Right.
And we carried 3,000 gallons. Can you imagine
Yeah. Pumping them out.
all that? And the
physically.
natives had a habit of smoking.
Oh, yeah.
And now one of the boats across the bay, just a short span from where we were, boom, she went up all of a sudden like that. And one of the sailors that I knew was in the water. And PT boats, you can reach down, and
Right.
I reached down to help him out of the water, and I took a hold of his arms up here, and I pulled the skin right off his arm.
I think we could all talk about that.
Yeah,
I lost a best friend 76 years ago. He had his leg blown off, and I'm holding him. And my sergeant said, "College boy," that was my nickname. You can't stay back with the wounded to get your ass forward. To leave your best friend die in a filthy hole in Germany, you don't get over that at any time. And I went through a lot. Originally, I don't think about it all the time. Now it's 76 years ago, but we can all relate to losing in combat, losing a close friend, and you want to do something, and the orders are you got to let the medics do their job, get forward. I didn't want to leave him no how, and then I wrote a letter to his mom and all that stuff, and that brings back very, very tight memories, you know. And so fortunately, as time went on, you know, I belong to a PTSD group. We meet every week now, and I try to tell the younger guys from Vietnam and what 2, 3, 4 tours, they're all messed up a little bit, losing guys. And I said, you got to fight through it and get over it, because you can't live your life just, you know, mourning all the time. So I think we all can relate to some of that stuff in combat.
If I may add to what you said about fuel, I remember when I was on watch up in the wheelhouse, as the boatsman made the watch, I had to blow the boatswain's pipe and pass the word that the smoking lamp is out. Nobody smoked when we were taking fuel on there, just for that reason.
Yeah.
Because that ship could blow up, you know, burn. And I remember piping that along. We call that piping.
Yeah.
When I blew that pipe and announced what was going on by the skipper. He said, you passed that on to the PA system. I took all the valves up there and opened them all up so the whole ship could hear, no matter where you were. When that word, we said pass the word, that was pass the word. And that was my job as a lower seaman, not a chief. Once you made chief, you don't do that no more. I was a third-class petty officer then, which is equivalent to a sergeant. That's when I had most duty up in the wheelhouse, when I was on watch for 4 hours.
I think one of the proudest moments I had when I got to put on the full military uniform that I had.
Okay.
That was one of my proudest moments.
Yeah, we all had that.
Yeah.
Certainly. So a point you brought up before is you don't feel like you're heroes, and that's only those that were killed in action are the heroes. And it's hard for you, especially all of you that have been in such combat, intense combat the way you are, but you do have to realize that you are heroes. And those that died there, they certainly are beloved and are killed in action are always held in the highest of esteem. But all of you, what you've done and what you've been through has certainly makes you American heroes.
We had a carry on.
And you have to accept that.
We had a carry on.
You did. All of you have brought up the losses you've had. I'm going to ask another, maybe a tough question. I'll start with you again, Alan, here. If you could see one of your comrades again, what would you say? One of your fallen comrades, if you could see him today.
I wouldn't say anything, but I'd give him a hell of a big hug, I can tell you that. I'm a hugger. I tell all the kids, forget the hate, learn to hug each other, and I'm known now as a liberator who says hug, don't hate. I get letters from the kids now. We formed the Hug, Don't Hate Club in your honor, Mr. Moskin, so if they want to put on my tombstone, he said hug, don't hate, I'll settle for that. But that's how I feel today, There's too much hate still in the world, And in this country too, unfortunately. What I saw on January 8th broke my heart. I never thought I'd see a march on our capital, the United States of America. We fought to get rid of all that garbage, and hate begets hate, that's all I can tell you. And learn to get rid of the hate, maybe the world will be a better place to live in.
Bob, same thing.
I would have said to him, I lost a couple of friends. I would have said to him, I says, 2 things I would have said. I said, I wish it was me, or what could I have done different? I had nobody, they had family. I pound myself to death at times saying, what could I have done different? Being a leader, And I get emotional sometimes.
We all do, yeah.
I guess it's sign of weakness.
Knowing what you know now, then what would you say? Meaning, not about that situation, but just knowing what you know now. I guess I'm trying to present it that way.
I would have,
You wouldn't do anything different.
no, I wouldn't do nothing.
Exactly. That's
I went because I'm proud to be,
Yeah.
to serve in the military. I wanted to do something. I wanted to be a part of my family, you know, I wanted to be a lifer. That's what I wanted to do, but unfortunately, the cards didn't come that way, you know. Vietnam broke me, you know.
But you can't change anything.
What's that?
happened.
Stay the way it
You
is.
can't
I know.
change a thing.
No.
What they try to tell me is accept things the way they were, and that'll help heal.
Right.
Well, you know, you say, did it make me a better person?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I say yes, and, you know, I look at what I achieved since I come home, and I said, what would they have done if they were in my place? So now I help, what I do for therapy for myself, I help veterans. Any veteran I see, I reach out to help them,
That's it.
because that's my survival thing. I have to help a veteran. My wife gets mad at me, says, why are you always helping a veteran? You don't understand.
Nobody knows veterans like other veterans.
That's right. We all can relate to it. But during World War II, in Vietnam, I go on and say this before, when I was going my second tour, I'm saying to myself, I don't know if I can make this second tour. Then I thought of you guys, World War II, how would they do it? What did they feel like? I had to keep pushing myself, you know.
Well,
I thought about you
I
guys.
tell you what I felt like. Going through all these invasions, I felt like I would never see home again. And I accepted that. And it turned around the other way around.
Yeah.
Here I am. By the grace of God, I'm here.
Well, you're an admiral now.
Yeah, you're an admiral. I made you an admiral, yeah.
You look it anyway.
I'm just a cheap petty officer. Retired.
Retired.
Retired and retired.
Jack, do you have any regrets from your time in service?
Oh, well, a lot of them, I guess.
A lot of regrets, you have a lot of regrets.
Well, when I joined the Navy, I was a 20-year man. But I messed around and got married. That was my first mistake. And, later on, I wanted to stay in the Navy, but she wanted me to get out. That was my second mistake. I fulfilled all my wishes, I guess. I flew all over the world in the Navy. I was an airline pilot when I got out of the Navy. I then I was a corporate pilot for Union Oil Company of California for 10 years. I fulfilled all of my wishes there. Every day I'm on a golf course now, I see an airplane go over, I can visualize everything in the cockpit. And,
Excellent.
I've been very fortunate. I'll be 100 in December, and I've been awful healthy, awful fortunate. And I could thank good Lord for that, I guess.
Amen.
The only thing that
God
the Navy-
bless you.
The only thing that the Navy left me with was alcoholism.
Yeah.
wow.
And there's quite a story behind that. These guys mostly have all heard it.
Yeah.
And how I stopped drinking and
Yeah, it's right when they invented the funnel.
There's a book out called The Night of the Shark. I guarantee you won't sleep for a few days, for a few nights. What an ugly book to see our people be eaten alive. You know, the Indianapolis.
I had a
that's what it
neighbor
was.
that was in the Navy, and he said they were in a longboat heading back to the ship, and the engine conked out. And he said it was a nice calm day and everything. So the guy that was running the boat, whatever he be or whatever, he said, that's all right, it's only 100 yards so I can swim back. I'll swim over to the boat. Okay, he dove in the water. And Morris said there was a big, huge swirl of water. That was the last I saw of the guy. Something was following the boat, waiting for somebody to jump in. He said the rest of the day, we were all cowering in the center of the boat, waiting for the main ship to find us.
I want to share something with these guys from Pearl Harbor. I was at a flea market one time, a couple years ago, and this guy says, yeah, I'm selling this hat. It was a Pearl Survivor hat, soldier's hat. Jack Pollard, his name was. Has his little pearl on his hat, has his name. But I tried to locate this family, and it had a flag in there. But I didn't know, where to go or what I had people look for, but they gave up on us. But I was gonna, to me that was something, that you guys, that the Navy, this man's stuff is here. How'd he get here? Is he alive?
Yeah,
I still have it.
yeah.
At home.
It's like a
I wanna-
plate helmet you gave me. It's got the guy's name on the back of it.
Yeah,
I've tried a couple ways to find it, can't
I
find
did.
it yet. but I'm-
I tried. I had people look for it. It seemed like they give up. I think there is a list of Pearl Harbor survivors. Jack Pollard, his name was, or Pollard or something. I have it at home. And it's his hat, and he has his ribbon on there.
Yeah.
Has a little pearl on it there.
I've been, every December the 7th, I've been back to Pearl Harbor by the Greatest Generation Foundation as a Pearl Harbor survivor. I've been back there at least 6 times, 6 years. And one year we were at Schofield Barracks, and there was 2 Japanese pilots there.
Oh,
They had me sit between the two to have my picture made. You don't know how funny I felt.
oh yeah,
Funny, but not easy.
not easy.
One of them said he's going to send me an email, but I'm still waiting for it.
Yeah, you look like part Japanese.
Yeah, sure.
Well, this hat could have been lost by a member of the thing. I know when I know myself, and I know Charlie. It happened to Charlie today. He walked away without his cane.
Yeah.
If you take your hat off and put it down there, sometimes you just walk away. I do it myself, so maybe he is alive or something, but I'd like to return it to the family, or to one of the family members,
Yeah.
To me, that means something to me. That I don't want to put it someplace. I'll tell you what, there was a guy down our way, Dave Turner, his name was. He got the Medal of Honor in World War II. He was an infantryman. Now, what happened is, his father received the medal.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this now. This is going to be heartbreaking. His father was an alcoholic. He sold it for a 6-pack of beer.
Oh my God.
A 6-pack of beer. The guy says, I'll give you the beer. The other guy's brother took it and gave it back to us. He sold it again for $5. Now that's sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
That's sad. Now I tracked it down to 4 people that had it, but the last guy died. They're all dead now, that one that had it. So it's out there someplace. And you only get one of those in a lifetime. But that was heartbreaking. And his sister told me, his sister, Dave Turner's sister told me, and she's gone now, that what happened to that. So, that's sad.
Yeah.
That is sad.
I think most of us in our group around Berwick, Bloomsburg, and well, Baldwin, where I live, to help is
Healing.
every second Thursday, we have a breakfast
Yeah.
where we get together.
Every month,
And I
yeah.
think that's one of the big things that help us all.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Where I live in Rockland County, we have a very active veterans group, and we try to help the guys in 2 or 3 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq coming back, and
Yeah.
particularly their families, their wives, or the mothers and fathers. They come to us sometimes, what's the matter with him? He's not the same person. I said, nobody's the same person when you go through combat, stuff like that. You
Yeah,
know,
nobody.
give them time, let them adjust. And I think it's very helpful. When the guys in particular, they don't want to talk to psychiatrists or psychologists
Yeah.
because they say they get, when they go for a job, they questions, did you ever see a psychiatrist? And when they put that down, they figure, so that with us, they get it out. You don't have to go to
Yeah,
psychiatrists or psychologists.
Yeah, we can relate to each
You
other.
know, been there, done
Yeah,
that,
we've
you know.
been
and
there.
But
that's-
we're all brothers and sisters.
No question.
May I add something to my career?
I don't know. Sure.
After the war, I was stationed in Japan itself.
Oh.
Because I was a 6-year enlisted man. And I only had 3.5 years of active duty. I still had 2.5 years to go. So I wasn't sent home.
Okay.
I still had duty. So I was stationed on a United States Navy base in Fukuoka, Japan.
Yep.
I was in charge of the captain's gig, his private boat. And I used to transport him to wherever he wanted to go. That was my duty then.
How were you treated by the Japanese?
But
How were you treated by the Japanese?
that's what I wanted to get to. When I was on that base, I used to go and bring candy for the kids and cigarettes. I didn't smoke at all in the Navy. I used to get cigarettes, 5 cents a pack, and I used to give it to the elderly folks.
PX.
They loved our cigarettes. And the kids loved the candy because when I come off the base going to their homes, they used to say, here comes Mikey-son, Mikey-son. They knew I was bringing candy. Really. And I'll tell you, those people didn't want a war. They were just, they never, I used to go on that base by myself all through town. Not one of them ever thought, I figured, man, they'll probably attack me. Not one did. I got along with every one of them. They were very peaceful people.
If I could add to that, Matt, so 50 years later, I was stationed in Japan,
There you know.
and they were very gracious.
They are.
Very gracious to us Americans there.
They were.
Maybe
Yeah,
a
because if
couple
they
of
were,
the
you might
older,
do it again.
maybe a couple of the older Japanese
Oh, well, naturally, you'll
harbored some ill will towards us, but
the
the rest, they were very gracious and were happy to have us there and what we did with them after the war.
And let me tell you this, when you entered their home, you had to remove your shoes.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't go in with
No,
your shoes.
no.
They were very clean people.
Yeah, they were.
But can I add something about that? And that goes back to Pearl Harbor. Before, I think at the time, and I can't speak today, but before Pearl Harbor, and maybe even today, but the Japanese were very, very disciplined people. And they were taught to obey commands by superiors, whether the government or otherwise. And so whatever they may have felt about the United States, and some of them did hate the United States, but a lot of them did not. But they were very disciplined people, and so if their military leaders or civilian leaders told them they were going to go to war and they would have to fight to the death, that's what they would do because they were so disciplined. And there's a story, I just want to add one little anecdote that's kind of telling, is I'll never forget when Pearl Harbor occurred, all the members of the American embassy, including the ambassador, they were all taken as prisoners of war. And they were all placed in the American embassy until the United States and Japan worked out a diplomatic exchange agreement. Now, during this time, because of the economic sanctions imposed by the United States, there were no cars on Tokyo streets because all the oil they had to be conserved for military purposes. So there were no cars on the streets. And I remember one guy who was a guy on the staff, and he would say he would go out, he had to go to a medical appointment, and they allowed him out to go to a doctor this is right after Pearl Harbor. And mind you, there's no cars on the streets, but there's red lights and green lights. People would line up until they would see that there was a red light, meaning they couldn't cross the street. There's no cars anywhere around, and they would pack up on the sidewalk, waiting for the light to change, even though there were no
Is that
cars on the
right?
streets.
Is that right? Oh, my goodness.
One of the
They
funny
were
things,
programmed, yeah.
yeah, one of the funny things that happened to me happened last December. My one granddaughter and Chris and myself flew to Honolulu. Coming over the water, we were getting ready to land. We were still over the water, and I looked out and I told my granddaughter, I says, "You better watch out for the Japanese fleet." She nudged me and she says, right behind me, said a Japanese couple. And I turned around, they were just snickering.
That's great.
Getting back to what you said about discipline, I owe that to the parents. The parents disciplined those Japanese children. Those children, when they got an order from their parents, they immediately accepted it. That's why those kids are very well disciplined.
That's true.
Because of their parents.
Right. We had a Japanese couple live next to us, and all the other girls and were out playing in the streets. And these two daughters who were friendly with my daughters, they had to be in doing their music lessons
Right.
and other stuff.
Right.
And I said, why don't you let your girls go out and play with my kids? Oh no, they know what the rules are.
Right.
They're very strict, the parents, and they brought up their kids in the right way, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
One's now a doctor or whatever. And,
Yes.
I always remembered that with the Asian, they're very strict on education and do the right
And
thing.
those people didn't want a war. They didn't want a war at all. None of
Well,
them.
I can tell you in Germany, the Army of Occupation, the German people that I associated with were very nice. You never thought there was a war.
I
that
know.
They liked it or whatever.
It seemed to
and,
be that way all over.
Yeah.
The Commodore people didn't want a war.
No, I don't think so.
Yes. They want to live in peace.
And I ended up marrying a German girl, so what are you going to do?
Don't forget years ago,
Does she hold a grudge?
don't forget years ago when Europeans migrated here.
Yeah.
Right? They all lived in one little community because of the language.
Yeah.
Then actually, as the kids grew up, they intermingled, intermarried, and now we have what we have today. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the way it is. And that worked out okay because we learned a lot from them coming here. A lot went to work for the United States. They were so glad to be citizens of the United States. Right? And I
Yes.
know now as a civilian, I belong to the Flag Day Association in Allentown. And I was the one that made, when they went for their citizenship papers and they were citizens, I gave each one a flag that was framed as a token to them that they're now United States citizens. And they were so proud of that.
Well, we have naturalization ceremonies
Right.
once a month in Rockland.
I was in every
We're
You know
there
what,
all the time, and
Yes.
they're so happy. I tell them, you're in the greatest country. We shake their hands, and
these people came from all different countries.
right.
You want to know something very interesting about that too? In the military now, at basic trainings ceremonies, they will naturalize people who've joined the military that were not currently
really? I
citizens.
didn't know that.
They will naturalize them
So
at the
that's automatic.
graduation.
Would that be automatic?
Yeah, well, they naturalize them there.
Service people.
But they have to pass certain tests
Oh, yeah.
and whatnot because there are others that are in that weren't naturalized.
Right.
But it is a very emotional event for them because not only are they graduating basic military training, boot camp, but then they're becoming United States
Well, I
citizens
understand too,
in
and maybe you
uniform.
could correct this. When the Philippines, when we were at war, and they joined us, they joined United States troops. After the war, they were allowed to be citizens of the United States. Is
Yeah.
that true?
I'm not sure about that. It could be.
Because of their service
It could
at
be.
that time,
That's something I don't
they
know.
were entitled to be United States citizens.
Sounds reasonable, but I don't know.
I don't know how true that is, but that's what I heard.
You know, there's another good thing while they're filming here. I don't know if these people know it or not. During Pearl Harbor, after Pearl Harbor, they stamped American currency with Hawaii on the back of that, didn't they?
Yeah.
A lot of
So they
people
knew it came
don't know
from
that.
Hawaii.
The word Hawaii on the American currency, did they?
I never heard of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did. Jack has a World War II veteran up my way. He was in the Navy. He goes to me, he says, hey, he says, I had this. I said, you're bullcrapping me. And Pete says, no, that's true, Bob. You're shaking your head, no.
No, yeah.
Oh,
No,
that's
he
true,
knows about
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was, and I asked a lot of people, scholars, at the Bloomberg Fair, I said, you know this stuff. I'm gonna ask you a question. He goes, no, I never heard that. I said, something simple you never knew. It's American currency, they stamped it. I said, what was the purpose of that? If Japanese would take over Hawaii, they couldn't spend it on the black market, is that right?
Probably.
Yeah, they had a reason, but they collected all this then.
When they bombed Pearl Harbor, I was just a 16-year-old kid in high school. Then when I turned 18, then I joined the Navy.
Yeah.
But I was 16 when they dropped that bomb.
Is that right?
Yes. I
Hell,
was a high school
when they
student.
bombed Pearl Harbor, I wasn't even on the planning board.
I was 15, I was 16.
I was looking down from upstairs.
Gotta be 96, it must be.
Yeah. You know what? This gentleman here and I were born in January. He is 16 days older than me.
Oh my goodness,
He
look
was
at that.
born January.
I hope you,
He
I hope you
outranked
listen
you.
to him.
You better listen.
January 10th, 1925. I was born January 26th, 1925. Could you imagine?
Wow.
Small world.
He's my papa. He's
Oh,
older.
yeah.
This was a great conversation.
I'm glad we had it, there's a lot of
Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
information.
yeah.
4 o'clock, what are we doing
Yeah.
now?
Time for supper.
Eating again.
We're still going? Okay.
for listening.
Oh, I want to thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, no, we're not finished yet.
We're not finished
We're
yet.
actually going to have Jack say something to close us out. But beforehand, again, just here we are right at the Person House in Kingston, New York. Lucky to have our World War II veterans, our Vietnam veteran, our Gold Star mom, and our author here to help us bring living history to life, history to life,
Oh, there's a
so
lot more
people
of it,
could
too.
hear firsthand the accounts of those the heroes of ours that served in these wars that really shaped our nation. So, thank you, Jack. Did you you had some? Maybe tell us a little bit more about your time on Ford Island.
Well,
Where is that?
it was a great place when I went there. You can imagine what it looked like to a farm boy from Texas who'd never
Yeah.
seen nothing but cotton fields and
Okay.
cornfields. And all the beautiful pineapple fields, the beautiful beaches, beautiful girls on the beaches. It was a wonderful place till Yamamoto arrived. But I want to say one thing about the gentleman talking to the young lads today. I give presentations all over the country, and to the young lads, I always end my presentations by telling them, they always make a remark about the greatest generation. I said, well, they call us the greatest generation, but if you kids stay in school, learn everything, you can become the next greatest generation. But I want you to remember that you live in the greatest country in the world. It's not always right, but it's still the greatest. So you stay in school, learn all you can. I tell them that education was not nearly as necessary in my day, but it's certainly necessary in yours.
That's true.
So just remember what I've said. You live in the greatest country in the world.
That's absolutely true.
I point at each one of them when I'm in the classroom. And I said, regardless of their age, and I said, get your education, listen to your teachers, listen to your parents, and someday you could be a president of the United States.
right.
You
You
could be a governor. You could be a senator. You could be anything you want, but you got to keep your mind straight and listen to your teachers and your parents.
That's right.
That's what I tell them.
Correct. Okay.
Is there
Get your
anything?
head out of that cell phone once in a while.
That's the hard part right there.
All
Where is he?
That's getting worse and worse.
I see these kids doing,
Yeah.
I know.
I'm getting,
When you see them waiting
It's
for a bus,
different.
waiting for a bus to pick up, they're all like that.
It's a different time. Is there anything else anyone would like to add? Anything over
well, the
here?
only thing I'd like to add is, I'm so glad that we were able to come as jointly
Yeah.
as we are and speak up. That's the best thing.
Get it out.
It's
And
good for
thank you
us.
for allowing the Vietnam veterans in, guys.
Yeah, to be,
Well, you guys are accepted.
I know we're accepted, I said, thank you. When we first started
And-
this,
And
World
what,
War II guys didn't like
I'm
it.
glad I met you because I learned a lot of
Yeah.
jokes
The
from you.
civilians, baby.
Yeah,
I never did anything.
Did you hear
well,
me?
not you,
oh, I know,
but
I remember you.
we're going back a number of years here.
Did you hear me?
Jack,
I'm
would you-
glad to have met you because I learned a lot of jokes from you.
I want to add to what this gentleman said a while ago, about the presentations, the fourth day after December the 7th, we were all allowed to return to our barracks. All the lockers had been broken open to retrieve white clothing for bandages. And at that time, everyone was given a postcard with two inscribed inscriptions. The first one said, I've been wounded. The second one said, I'm okay, don't worry. That's all you could put on it. My mother received this card 14 days later. The kids can't understand that. They think you just pick up an iPhone, and call,
Oh, yeah.
It's a new world today.
It's a new world, all
Well,
right.
everybody says, in the future, well, guess what? We're in the future.
My last deployment, I was able to Skype with my
Yeah,
family
that's
almost on a daily basis.
We had to stand in line for an hour and a half and then go, hello, over.
It grew out through my career. My first deployment was that way, waiting once a week I could call.
Yep.
By the last deployment, I was on the computer looking at my son, saying, "Did you clean up after dinner? There might be a bomb going off behind me. Okay, I gotta get off now."
Well, during the Second World War, we had to wait till we got mail. And the ships, we were always going ahead of it. We got mail sometimes
my
that we
God.
should have got for Christmas, we got in July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get one before or
And that
after
was,
the date.
that's the only
I gotta
communications we
say, our
had.
mail was
Writing a
pretty
letter.
good.
Yeah.
Ours was pretty good. Sometimes if they sent you a pack of chocolate chip cookies, you got chocolate chip dust.
Yeah.
Because it was bounced
We-
around so much. It was all
We had a member with the Purple Heart. I'm commander of
Purple Heart.
529. He's my finance officer here. But anyway, you know what I put up with. There was this World War II guy. He was infantry, CIB, and he was an officer. And he says, I took my Luger. I took off a German. I took it apart. He said, I sent it home. He said, piece by piece. And his wife got it in the mail. She says, what am I gonna do? She said, I guess I gotta take it to a gunsmith and put it back together. He's gonna need that out there. And she mailed it back to me. Oh my God. I said, no. He said, Jay, no friend.
Speaking of mail, we have an Italian, those Italian parents, and you know what they send? They send their son. They send him pepperoni, and it was waxed. It was waxed, and it lasted until it got to us. Yeah, so he shared that pepperoni with us, guys. Boy, that was great. But it was dipped in wax.
Did it beat Spam?
When
Don't
Bob
tell
was
me
younger-
about spam.
When Bob was younger, he was kidnapped.
We ate
By a couple
spam.
kidnappers.
Oh, no.
They gave him the ransom note and sent him home to his parents with it. They read the note and gave him the money and sent him back.
Speaking of spam, they had spam with us for 3 months. They cooked it, baked it, no matter any which way, it was still spam.
My
When
brother
I get
loved
home,
liverwurst. He
I
loved
told
that
my
spam.
parents, Don't get me spanned.
But I love that today.
I didn't eat
Oh, I
that
love
for
those
years
too.
after.
I said I had a.
Oh, I love it.
My dad hated it for years.
I love it.
I didn't like ham for probably 10 years. Because we had it every day for 28 freaking days.
In the service.
Jack became a bologna expert, right, Jack?
Yeah, I still eat it.
I love bologna. Love bologna.
All right, well, again, it's been an honor for me to be able to sit amongst you and to spend this time with you. God bless all of you, each and every one of you.